My name is Dr. Lowell Taubman. See a couple of my patients here. It's a pleasure to be here. And we are going to hodgepodge around Long Beach. We're not going to go chronologically because this city was not built chronologically. Let's start with Long Beach was formed by the glaciers coming down and melting and leaving the sooty sand. And around 1200, 1300, the Indians were the residents of Long Beach. It wasn't called Long Beach, it was 3 barrier islands with shifting sands. I was going to call this the Hurricane Survival Tour. But we were going to, we will let, so there were, and I won't say the Indian names, but the Rockaways, the Merricks, and they were spelled like R-A-C-K-A-W, so they would change to American. And the Indians used Long Beach as a resort town. What the Tacapusha, what the Indians would do would come to Long Beach in summertime from the hills. Many of them came from Connecticut, and they came down to this south coast to, well, obviously for the, we'll go halfway down and then I'll catch up. So the Indians would come here and do their fishing, their whaling, their hay sedge, their sedge clams, oysters, and of course the air was much. Well, they didn't have pollution, so but it was comfortable. So in a way, it was a resort town. Around 1500, Henry Hudson was sailing by Long Island, and he commented in his notes in 1546 on the white sandy beaches of Long Island. What happened was that Long Beach really, and I didn't know this, started as a Dutch community, and as the people from Europe came over, we'll stop over. Yeah. As the settlers came over, they made deals with the Indians for wampum, which were shells, and the Dutch sold some stuff, traded some land with the settlers. And early, what happened was Hempstead was becoming a whaling port. Hempstead was the Mecca, and Hempstead leased property on Long Beach, so the farmers could get hay or sedge hay or weeds from the beach. But I think it was $10 a year, so they could herd and get their hay. And then the oystermen came in, and lobstermen and whalers. It's about 1700 now, and New York was rapidly expanding. Coney Island, maybe Bedford-Stuyvesant, some of these towns, people were looking for the newest, greatest hotspot to go. So the train, the Long Island Railroad, went to Hempstead, and there were, in about 1879, there was the owner of the railroad, I think his name was Levitt or Larrett. He was in Long Beach, and he's thinking, well, where can we make money? They built up Coney Island, and the Rockaways, and they were looking for a new hot spot. So he was hunting. They would come by, not really barges, but they would get out to the rock, sportsmen fishing. And he said, what can I do? They had a train out of the island, and he says maybe if we made a right at East Rockaway, which might have been called Purcell's about that time. So I think his name was Lappin, something like that. They built tracks, and he leased some of the land, and they made a right at East Rockaway and brought the train out here. He was a good promoter. Obviously, they were capitalists, and the country was booming. And what he did was he got into cahoots with his buddies, and they prefabricated a house in Queens. And in 3 months, they built the Long Beach Hotel. So the Long Beach Hotel was, we'll talk about it, Queen Anne style. They put it up, and it had a spangled roof, and what they advertised that it was the biggest hotel in the world. Well, it was. It had 2 more rooms than the hotel in Brooklyn. So they had several problems with the hotel. First of all, it was huge, and I can't say it was a success. I believe it sat roughly 1,000 to 1,500 people at once for lunch. That's how it worked. And the hotel had problems with obviously getting the people in, and then feeding everybody, and then sewage. So the hotel was not a major success. It had good years and bad years. The oystermen would allow the trains to come into Long Beach, but they had to get their permission too. They were allowed to use the hotel, the Long Beach Hotel, and what happened was if 1,000 people eat lunch, 1,000 people go to the bathroom, well, the oyster bed started to be affected and the water was getting polluted. So we'll come back to the 1880 Long Beach Hotel, or Hotel Long Beach, depends on what postcard you look at. And I have a website. I brought some business cards that has about 10,000 pictures up. But just to jump ahead 20 years, we'll say the Long Beach Hotel burned down around 1907. There was this genius by the name of Senator Reynolds. At age 21, he was the youngest senator, and he was an entrepreneur. And he said, let's bring the rich and famous to Long Beach, and he just knew how to work the system. So he would. So we're going to start with this house. Right now, this is called the Clara Steele House. I don't know if some of you people might have been inside it.
What's it called?
Clara Steele. She is an artist and comes from Italy. And I tried to get us on the tour, but unfortunately the house was affected severely by the hurricane, so we were unable to enter it. But keep an eye out for future tours, because this house, who's been in? Everyone up there, so you. So one day you're going to have to get into the house, and you won't believe it.
And she was amazing.
And she was amazing, and the house is all full of cherubs, and it has all the... So Senator Reynolds had architectural designs on the house. It had to be red tile, it had to be stucco, it had to have, the streets had to have red brick. There's a couple of stories in this house, just to backtrack. The hottest person, like the Lady Gaga of 1900, was someone called Lillian Roth. I don't know much about her. And I was discussing this discussion with my kids. You know, no one knows who these people are, and there's different ages. Well, at least no one here is 17, so it's okay. So what I know about Lillian Roth is that first of all, there's a couple of movies made about her. My only connection to her is that she was in Marx Brothers' Animal Crackers movie, which is important to me because that's a big deal. But there were two movies made about her. She was an alcoholic, and if you go on Wikipedia, you can get details of Lillian Roth. And the house is quite remarkable, and might have been the first cottage to be built in Long Beach. They call these mansions cottages with a view of Manhattan. And she dated all the billionaires. That's not true. All the millionaires was. So we'll go slow, and you can see the statuary and the rotundas and the views. It's quite a house. And as I said, we did try, but it wasn't meant to be on this trip. So now we're going to backtrack again. And Long Beach was sort of a figure eight, a horizontal figure eight. And what Senator Reynolds thought of doing was he would dig up the ocean and fill in Long Beach, dredging. So there's tons of pictures at my website of Senator Reynolds. And we're going to stop behind that white car. So what Senator Reynolds did was he dredged the ocean, and there's all these great stories and pictures, and he made land where there's no land. He raised Long Beach 9 feet above sea level, and he had a crack team of salesmen, Richard Day, and they designed. So here's another house, and this house is owned but now by Luke of Luke's Surf Shop, and I've been in it, and it has a winding, what's that? And what's interesting about this house is this little cement block. That's for horses, okay, for the horses too. So that's like a remnant of the century. And there's a mirror of this house. There are several houses that are similar. And so we'll go slowly, and notice it's stucco. In the 1880 World's Fair in Chicago, they had all the newest and the greatest technology. And they found that stucco, this is left here, we'll make a left here. Stucco was able to keep out the heat in summertime, and in wintertime it kept the heat in. That's where they had plumbing and new electricity and incandescent light bulbs. So Senator Reynolds was a city planner, and there was a lot of city planning in Long Beach. Someone mentioned that there was no city planning, but this city. So Senator Reynolds gave a lot of thought to building these white elephants, these beautiful houses. When you came to Long Beach in the 1900s, you brought your chambermaid, your laundress. When you came, you stayed. You came for 3 months. On your right, so each house had a massive plot of land, and over different generations it got chopped up into smaller plots of land. Just to go fast forward now 50 years, after the Depression, Senator Reynolds had to change his design of houses. He had to make the houses smaller for middle-class people. And these call them bungalows, these Reynolds houses were for more of the common man. He kept making a lot of money and then losing his money. I think the expression, he was a millionaire by 21, and by 29 he was broke, something like that. So they said, we'll lend you more money, but you just can't have a house for 30 people. So they brought in those type of Reynolds houses, smaller, more manageable houses. And so we are on Lafayette Boulevard now, and Long Beach didn't. not that it had it grew in pieces. So there were city planners, but they just worked on Westholme, or they just worked on the beachfront. And then other generations came and filled in some spots. So we're gonna, all right, so this was Park Avenue, and it might have been called Garfield. One of these streets was Garfield Avenue. You know which one? Probably Park Avenue, Long Beach Road was Garfield Avenue. And what's that? The trolley was, did it go this far down?
Yeah,
so there was
Boulevard too.
they had a trolley, and we were trying to get the trolley for this trip to make it more fun, but it's out of commission. So, so this Long Beach is a very eclectic architectural town. You have the stucco homes, and then you have also say prairie style, and then you have. So it's hard to pick out, like this house here, it looks like it's an old house, but it's being redone. It's hard to, you have to know Long Beach to pick out the houses that were redone versus restored. We'll make a right here. I was talking to a lot of my patients today, and most of them did not know of the military history of Long Beach. If you're not from Long Beach, you didn't realize that this town was all military. So just to change a little bit, we're going to go to World War I now, and it was around 1914, and the recruitment camp was out in Camp Upton, also called Camp Mill, on out in Suffolk County, where that laboratory is. And say a 500,000 soldiers, that's where they left for Europe. Give me 1 second to think about this. Brookhaven National Laboratory, that's where the camp was. Well, as the war wound down, there was Army surplus, and people were able to buy the bunks or the officers' house at Camp Upton for a song and a dance. They would put the houses on a barge, and they would take them down, and at New York Avenue they would unload the barges. Now, this is about 1918. The doughboys, the soldiers, didn't have cars, so there was no reason to have streets because nobody had a car. So what they built were the walks. And this was 1918, 1919, and there's still a couple of these houses untouched, see if we can find any. The walks were named after the months. And there's a lot of Long Beach, there's a lot of military history here besides that, in Camp Upton. And one of the soldiers wrote that song, you gotta get up in the morning, that thing. And so yeah, so these are the walks. They were hit very heavy by Sandy. And the houses are built back to back and side to side. And it's a lovely community. And it's bouncing back really nicely. So that's just briefly about World War I and Long Beach. This wasn't, I imagine if you had a time machine, these were all sand streets. The next generation of people, Senator Reynolds, anticipated the automobile, the horseless carriage. We'll make a left here? We'll make a left here. Going straight is, unless you want to go to the station, make a left here. We'll go to left. Going straight is Atlantic Beach. Atlantic Beach was another community that we won't get into. Let's stop here for 1 second. There's a big mafia contingency in Long Beach. Victoria Gotti now lives in Atlantic Beach. And this is Grand Boulevard. The only house really that stands is this giant mansion on the left. And this was just one of a half dozen houses that were. That's a very impressive house for the nanny and the seamstress and the laundress. In the early days, when you went to the boardwalk, you had to wear white. By the way, the stucco houses had to be pastel colored, white, blue, pink, and so this is like the only house on this block, and there are some pictures. We'll make a right here. This is Penn Street. One way, we're not making a right. But this church, this is St. Mary's? St. Ignatius. Has anyone been in this church?
Yeah.
It's really unbelievable. There are add-on parts, but you can still make out what's the original. And it's as good as anything in Europe. It's quite... I'm not going to get into the houses of worship. It's not my expertise, and it's a whole nother lecture. Everyone thinks that Long Beach, that's not true. A lot of people think that Long Beach was built by elephants, the boardwalk was built by elephants. Most people know now it's a publicity stunt, but it was very effective, where people are still talking about it. You know, Senator Reynolds brought over the elephants from make a left? Make a left. Yeah. From Coney Island and, what's that? Dreamland. And there is a film of the elephants, which I did try to get from a film library out in Long Island unsuccessfully, but I have a day job, but I did try to get it. But there's about a half dozen pictures of the elephants, and somewhere there's a film, because in one of the pictures you see the movie camera. So the boardwalk is, those are the original pilings. It's a 2.2 mile one direction boardwalk, and the boardwalk was like for the rich and the famous. Senator Reynolds tried to make this like the French Riviera. And there's so much documentation about Long Beach. There was a gentleman by the name of Fowler who would sell postcards of Long Beach, take the picture or whatever. And he was on the board, and lots of, let's make a left here.